It's English Rewired, helping you speak English with confidence, one step at a time.
Hello, gorgeous humans, and welcome back to English Rewired. I'm Sarah, and I'm absolutely thrilled you're here with me today. If you're new to our community, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we're not just learning English here. We're expanding our vocabulary while transforming our mindset and approach to life. Today's topic is something incredibly close to my heart: the gift of imperfection. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. How can imperfection be a gift? We live in a world that seems obsessed with flawlessness, with getting everything just right, with presenting a polished version of ourselves to the world. Social media feeds us endless streams of seemingly perfect lives, perfect bodies, perfect homes, perfect relationships. But what if I told you that this pursuit of perfection might actually be robbing us of some of life's most beautiful experiences? The word imperfection itself comes from the Latin imperfectus, meaning not finished or incomplete. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is great vocabulary for you. The concept of imperfection doesn't necessarily mean flawed or broken. It can mean evolving, growing in process. When we think of imperfection this way, it becomes less about failure and more about being beautifully human and wonderfully unfinished. Perfectionism is what psychologists call a maladaptive trait. That's a fantastic word meaning something that seems helpful, but actually causes problems. Perfectionism masquerades as high standards, but it's really fear wearing a fancy disguise. It's the fear of not being good enough, of being judged, of being rejected or abandoned. Perfectionists often procrastinate because they're terrified of creating something that isn't flawless. They might spend hours rewriting an email, agonizing over every word, or they might avoid starting projects altogether because they can't guarantee perfection. I used to be a recovering perfectionist myself, and I say recovering because it's an ongoing process. I remember spending literally hours on tasks that should have taken minutes, paralyzed by the need to get everything exactly right. I would rewrite sentences dozens of times, second-guess every decision, and exhaust myself trying to anticipate and prevent every possible mistake or criticism. It was mentally and emotionally draining, and ironically, it often prevented me from producing my best work because I was so focused on avoiding mistakes that I couldn't think creatively or take meaningful risks. The Japanese have this beautiful concept called wabi-sabi, and isn't that a lovely phrase to add to your vocabulary arsenal? Wabi-sabi is the aesthetic philosophy that finds beauty in imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. It celebrates the cracks in pottery, the weathered wood, the asymmetrical flower arrangement. It recognizes that these imperfections don't detract from beauty. They enhance it, make it more interesting, more authentic, more alive. Think about some of the most memorable people you know. I'm willing to bet they're not the ones who seem to have everything perfectly figured out. They're probably the ones who laugh at their mistakes, who tell funny stories about their failures, who seem comfortable in their own skin despite, or maybe because of, their quirks and flaws. There's something magnetic about authenticity, something deeply attractive about people who aren't trying to hide their humanity. Perfectionism kills creativity faster than almost anything else. When we're so focused on avoiding mistakes, we become risk-averse. We stick to what we know works, what we can control, what won't expose us to potential criticism. But creativity requires experimentation, play, the willingness to try things that might not work. Some of the most beautiful art, the most innovative solutions, The most meaningful breakthroughs come from embracing what we might initially see as mistakes or imperfections. Here's a vocabulary word that's become popular in recent years: vulnerability. It comes from the Latin vulnus, meaning wound, but vulnerability isn't about being wounded. It's about being open, genuine, willing to be seen as we truly are. Researcher Brené Brown talks about vulnerability as the birthplace of courage, creativity, and change. When we allow ourselves to be imperfect, to be vulnerable, we create space for authentic connection with others. The perfectionist mindset often creates what psychologists call all-or-nothing thinking, another useful phrase for your mental health vocabulary. This is when we see things in extremes. Something is either perfect or it's terrible. We're either successful or we're failures. We either do something flawlessly or we shouldn't do it at all. But life exists in the nuanced middle ground. Most of our experiences are somewhere between perfect and terrible. They're beautifully, messily, imperfectly human. I want to share something that might shift your perspective on mistakes entirely. In many learning contexts, mistakes are actually celebrated because they indicate that we're pushing our boundaries, testing our limits, growing beyond our current capacity. When you're learning a new language, like many of you listening right now, every mistake you make is actually evidence that you're brave enough to try, that you're in the process of expanding your skills. Your imperfect English is infinitely more valuable than perfect silence. The word amateur has gotten a bad reputation in our culture, but its etymology is beautiful. It comes from the Latin amare, meaning to love. An amateur is literally someone who does something for love, not for money or recognition or external validation. There's something pure about that approach, something that perfectionism often corrupts. When we can approach our endeavors with amateur enthusiasm, doing things because we love them, not because we need to be the best at them, we free ourselves to enjoy the process rather than just focusing on the outcome. Let's talk about good enough, a phrase that makes perfectionists cringe, but is actually liberating. Good enough doesn't mean mediocre or careless. It means recognizing when something serves its purpose, when additional effort would yield diminishing returns, when perfectionism is preventing us from moving forward. Sometimes good enough allows us to complete projects, ship products, have conversations, take action. Perfect can be the enemy of done, and done is often more valuable than perfect. Here's where imperfection becomes truly generous. It makes us more relatable, more approachable, more human to others. When we share our struggles, our learning process, our mistakes, we give others permission to be imperfect too. We create what I like to call permission spaces, environments where people don't have to pretend to have it all figured out. This is particularly important if you're using English as a second language. Your willingness to speak imperfectly, to make mistakes, to be in process gives other learners courage to do the same. The concept of iterate is crucial here. That's a wonderful word meaning to repeat a process with the aim of improving. In technology, in art, in personal growth, iteration is how we get better. We try something, see what works and what doesn't, adjust and try again. Each iteration doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be a step forward. This approach makes growth sustainable and enjoyable rather than torturous and never-ending. Perfectionism often stems from what psychologists call conditional self-worth, the belief that our value as people depends on our performance, our achievements, our ability to meet certain standards. But what if our worth was unconditional, not dependent on what we do, but inherent in who we are? This shift from conditional to unconditional self-worth is profound and liberating. It means we can try things, fail at things, be mediocre at things, and still be valuable, lovable, worthy of respect and belonging. One of the most beautiful aspects of embracing imperfection is that it allows us to be present. When we're not constantly worried about whether we're doing something perfectly, we can actually enjoy doing it. We can notice the texture of the experience, the learning happening in real time, the small moments of joy or discovery that perfectionism often causes us to miss. Here's a powerful reframe. Instead of seeing imperfection as something to overcome, what if we saw it as information? Our mistakes tell us where we are in our learning journey, what we need to focus on next, what's challenging us to grow. They're not evidence of our inadequacy. They're feedback from our experience. The word feedback itself suggests something cyclical, something that helps us adjust and improve, not something that judges or condemns us. The pursuit of perfection is often really the pursuit of control, another insightful word to add to your psychological vocabulary. We think if we can just do everything perfectly, we can control how others perceive us, control outcomes, control our level of safety and acceptance in the world. But control is largely an illusion. Life is inherently uncertain, unpredictable, uncontrollable. Embracing imperfection is really about embracing this uncertainty, finding peace with the unknown, learning to surf the waves of life rather than trying to still the ocean. Let me introduce you to another beautiful concept: satisficing. This term, coined by economist Herbert Simon, combines satisfy and suffice. It means choosing the first option that meets your criteria rather than searching for the absolute best option. Satisficing recognizes that the perfect choice often doesn't exist, and even if it did, the time and energy spent searching for it might not be worth it. This approach can be liberating in everything from career decisions to what to wear in the morning. For those of you learning English through this podcast, embracing imperfection is particularly relevant. Language learning is inherently messy. You'll mispronounce words, use incorrect grammar, choose imprecise vocabulary. But every imperfect sentence you speak is building your fluency. Every mistake you make and learn from is expanding your competence. Your willingness to communicate imperfectly is actually the fastest path to improvement. Here's something that might surprise you. Perfectionism can actually be a form of procrastination. When we tell ourselves we need to wait until we can do something perfectly, we often end up not doing it at all. The perfectionist says, "I'll start writing when I have the perfect idea," or "I'll apply for that job when my resume is flawless," or "I'll have that difficult conversation when I know exactly what to say." Meanwhile, opportunities pass by, relationships remain strained, dreams stay unrealized. The antidote to perfectionism isn't lowering our standards, it's changing our relationship with standards themselves. We can still care about quality, still strive for excellence, still want to do our best. But we can hold these aspirations lightly, recognizing that best is contextual, that excellence is a moving target, that quality includes authenticity and humanity, not just technical perfection. I want to leave you with this thought. Your imperfections are not bugs in your system, they're features. They're what make you uniquely you, what create opportunities for connection, what fuel your growth and learning. They're evidence that you're alive, that you're trying, that you're brave enough to show up in the world as your authentic self rather than hiding behind a mask of perfection. The gift of imperfection is the gift of being human. It's the permission to be in process, to be learning, to be beautifully, wonderfully, perfectly imperfect. It's the recognition that our flaws and struggles and mistakes don't make us less worthy of love and belonging. They make us more relatable, more real, more alive. So here's your challenge for this week. Try something new, something you might not be perfect at. Embrace the learning curve. Notice the perfectionist voice in your head, thank it for trying to protect you, and then do the imperfect thing anyway. Speak that foreign language with an accent. Share that creative project before it's ready. Have that important conversation, even though you don't have all the words figured out. Trust that your imperfect action is more valuable than perfect inaction. That brings us to the end of today's exploration of the gift of imperfection. Remember, by listening to podcasts like this, you're not just developing a healthier mindset, you're also expanding your English vocabulary with words like maladaptive, vulnerability, iterate, satisficing, and so many others. If you found this helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to English Rewired for more content that feeds both your language learning and your personal growth. Remember, you don't have to be perfect to be perfectly worthy of love, success, and happiness. Until next time, I'm Sarah, and thank you for being part of our beautifully imperfect English Rewired community.